guys, welcome to another video. In today's video I'll be doing my July wrap up. I will be separating my book wrap up and my movie wrap ups because guess what, your girl read more than one book. More than one book in 1 month, which is a huge feat. I'm sure that this for other booktubers would be a bit of a fail month, but for me, oh my gosh, 4 books in a month is an accomplishment. I felt so good about my reading, and so yeah. So this is gonna be my bookish wrap up. So in today's video, I'll be going over all the books that I read in the month of July. Also, before we get started, can we just appreciate my Akira t-shirt? Yes. Where did I even buy this from? Oh yeah, Culture Kings. They had like all these retro kind of anime t-shirts, and let me just tell you, I was late in the game with Akira. Like I only watched it at the end of 2019, I think. Towards the end of 2019 for the first time in its entirety. I'm sure when I was a kid I had brief glimpses of it, but I didn't remember much of it. But after I watched it in the cinema, I would say that I am absolutely obsessed with Akira. I even bought like the entire set of the manga, so I'll probably discuss Akira in like a future video because oh my gosh, I would say that I love the anime movie, but I haven't read the manga yet, so we shall see, we shall see. I will get back to you on that one. But anyway, this video isn't about Akira, even though I want it to be. We're just gonna move on straight into the books that I finished in the month of July. Let's go. The first one that I finished is no surprise because it's a continuation from June, and that is Verge by Yuknavitch. And this is a collection of short stories, which I've already established in a previous video. I will say at the end of this, I ended up giving this book 2 stars out of 5 on Goodreads, mainly because I didn't vibe well with a lot of the stories in this book. So there was 20 short stories. Am I correct? Yes, so there were 20 stories, and I think I only liked 4 of the short stories. I think 4 or 5, which is really let's just say that's a pretty uneven balance between all the stories. As much as I love the cover, I mean, look at this marketing, man. It's so beautiful. It's probably like my favorite bookish cover when it comes to all my short story collections that I have. It's stunning. So I even picked it up randomly at the bookstore because I was so drawn to this. I'm actually severely disappointed that I didn't really vibe well with a lot of the short stories. What I did appreciate about this collection of short stories is that each individual story is from the perspective of misfit in society. So a lot of the characters are very, very different from normal perspectives you would usually get. And so I very much appreciated that. I thought that that was a very nice kind of ongoing theme throughout all the short stories. I also really liked Yuknavitch's writing style. I think that actually, like when, oh, I think my dog wants to come in. Look, Sam, say hi to everyone. Or just to the camera. I know you don't like cameras. It's so funny though, like Sam, he really hates like cameras. You can see that he's not even trying to look at the lens. I don't know what's wrong. When I whip out my phone, he always like turns away. It's sad times if I ever want to be a petstagrammer. Anyway, what was I saying about this book? I think I was talking about her writing style. I did like it. There were a lot of lines that were just so quotable and so beautifully written, but also there's some graphic sort of scenes sometimes, just raw and unfiltered, and so that kind of was like unexpected and kind of awkward at some points, but I get it. In a way, it is supposed to be raw and unfiltered and really about each character's journey in their little few pages that they have to tell their story. But yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I didn't vibe well with this, and I should have known because I think now that I've seen like 1 or 2 booktubers talk about this short story collection in their wrap up and not liking it as well, I guess I'm not the only one that feels that way. I'm just so sad. I am so sad that this didn't work out for me. There were 3 stories in particular that I really, really liked, and it was very like thought-provoking and such, and so I really, really liked 3 of them, and then all the other ones I'm like, I don't know. 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 Yeah, very forgettable. Honestly, some of these short stories, I don't even remember what happened. Sad times for me as a reader, but beautiful cover though. The next book I read is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. Oh my gosh, okay, I'm like ticking off my TBR list. Y'all know that I don't stick to my TBRs. I'm knocking out the books from my winter TBR and I am proud of myself for that. This is my first Riley Sager book. Lock Every Door is basically a mystery thriller. I think I said crime in my last like TBR video or whatever. Might I just add what a wonderful cover design for Riley Sager's books. It's bold, it's eye-catching. The title takes up most of the cover, but for some reason I really do like this cover design. Very nice, very beautiful. What is this book about? It's about, what's her name? Our main protagonist, Jules Larson. She's going through a rough patch in her life. She needs a place to stay. She doesn't have much money. She's down in her luck, you know? Then she comes across this apartment sitting advertisement for like this, oh my gosh, Sam, no, why? Excuse me 1 second. Jules comes across this advertisement for apartment sitting at this really beautiful but elusive apartment in the middle of Manhattan. It's in a very fancy district. More than anything, it pays extremely well. So of course she applies for this job and then somehow manages to get hired, and then things aren't as it seems. There's all these kind of rules that these apartment sitters need to abide by. You're not allowed to have any visitors at all. You always have to stay the night at the apartment. All these kind of very strict rules. She also ends up befriending another apartment sitter, and then one day she goes missing and the mystery begins to unravel. It gets crazy, it's creepy. There is a constant kind of feeling of suspense throughout the book. It's not really over the top, nothing very graphic or very confronting ever happens. So in that sense, it's kind of like a decent read for those of you who want to get into this crime mystery thriller genre but you don't want anything too intense. I think this is a nice one to start with because I don't remember anything like really triggering happening in this book. I think that this is a pretty decent one to get started on if you want to read from the crime genre. This one's a pretty decent one to start with. It's not too crazy, although in the story things escalate. I would say that this was a pretty decent read. I ended up rating this book 4 out of 5 stars. I would highly recommend it. I can see why this is hyped up. I think his other book is called Home Before Dark, and I am really intrigued about that because that kind of deals with a haunted house, but I don't know if it's actually gonna contain like supernatural elements or not, but I hear that that one's even better than Lock Every Door, so I'm excited. I'm glad that I ended up reading this one first, because if Home Before Dark is even better, I'm just gonna have a fun time reading this author's works. So I'm excited. I don't usually read from this genre in general, so it was nice to dip my toes into it every now and then. The month of July seems like it was an every now and then situation, so I was very much happy to actually enjoy a book after, you know, Verge. We're not going to talk about that book, but this one, yes, recommend. Had a fun time. If you are looking for anything to do with like thriller mysteries, that is the one. The next book that I have is Vicious by B.E. Schwab, and let me just say, proud of myself once again, because this is another book on my winter TBR list. Girl, I gotta appreciate this moment because I read this book in like 2 days. I know some of y'all can finish a book in a day. I think it was like 2 or 3 days, but for me, oh, like that is something unheard of. So let me just appreciate myself for a moment here. It does help that the chapters in this book are really short. Whenever a book has short chapters, I end up reading it super quickly because you get motivated in a way to like just keep reading. I guess like the way the book was structured made it a lot more of a fast read. This one had a very fast paced story, which I appreciated. Not only am I ticking books off my TBR list, but this book, it was a mission to get this book read for many, many years. I've owned this for like, I don't even know, like 5 years? Who knows? I don't even remember how long ago I bought this, but I've been wanting to read it for the longest time, and I finally did, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed the heck out of this. This book is definitely more character driven rather than a plot. This book is a little interesting because it is playing with different timelines. So you have the perspective of the current time that it's set, and then it goes back in time like 10 years ago to when these two characters were like best friends in college, and then they discover a way to bring out like supernatural abilities in yourself. Then when you skip to the present day, one of the guys has just come out of prison and the other one is trying to kill him. So this is an intense situation, but they're also like superpowered human beings. So they're super villains. Both of the characters are very flawed characters. They're definitely in the morally gray area. I personally like Victor over Eli because Eli was a righteous son of a bitch. I was just rooting for Victor to like take him out. Like Victor isn't a good person at all. I think he's on the spectrum of like a sociopath, but still I was like, you gotta take out Eli because he's an issue. Like he's a problem. Eli thinks he's on this righteous path and he is not it. Delusional much? Delusional. I was rooting for Victor to take out Eli the whole time. You know, even though they're both like villainous characters, there is a side that I usually swing to when I'm reading from the perspective of a lot of like villainous characters. There's always someone that I side with more. So Victor's my man in this situation. I really, really enjoyed this book. It was originally supposed to be a standalone. I'm a little hesitant to go into the second book because I hear that it's not as great, but I already own it, so I was like, I might as well give it a go sometime in the near future. Hopefully in the next month or two I might pick it up, but had such a fun time with this book. The way Vicious ends, I can see why it was initially intended to be a standalone because it wrapped up the story pretty nicely, but you know, there could also be potential expansion of this world. But I liked it. Oh my gosh, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was such a quick read. If you want something like quick and easy and just you like morally gray characters, you like the sound of two villainous characters going head to head with each other, this is the one for you. Yeah, I appreciate Vicious. More than anything, this is the one that I'm proud of because I've been wanting to read this one for years. It's been on like multiple TBRs, but I've never ended up reading it. So sorry, past Carolyn, but I finally did it. Finally did it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the last book that I have here is my favorite of the month. It was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I filmed a review and a spoilery discussion for this book, and honestly it's my latest obsession. I hopefully would have edited and uploaded that review by now, but I don't know. If I have uploaded it, I will link it here if you want my more critical thoughts on the story. But here I'm just gonna say, I don't know if it's because I was just coming off a night shift and so I had like a weird sleeping pattern already, but I stayed up like 3 nights in a row reading this book. Obviously I didn't finish it in those 3 days, but I still finished it within the week, which is also another proud of me moment because to finish a book in a week is like unheard of in 2021. It probably does help that I'm in lockdown right now and I can't go anywhere. The Greater Sydney is currently like locked down. It's like a hard lockdown, so you can't go anywhere. Like we are trapped in like a 10k radius. I think it's even 5k's now. You basically can only go around your neighborhood and that's it. So that probably helped me just stay home and just read a lot of books. 4 books being a lot for me. But yes, The Poppy War, what can I say that hasn't already been said by so many people? It was published a few years ago, but it started getting a lot of hype around last year, or was it a year before? Maybe last year in like 2020. It started getting crazy hype. I've always been interested in it and I was only recently very in the mood to read The Poppy War. And so I ended up picking it up and boy, was I in for an emotional roller coaster because there were times when I was really enjoying this and having a really good time, and then there was others where I was just like, horrific. My heart was like torn to shreds in a way. It was just so tragic what happens to people in war. So if anything, what you've heard of from the Poppy War, where it's grim dark, and let me emphasize on the grim, and I like grim dark. I usually like grim dark fantasy, but this, I'm telling you, it's shocking. It's shocking. The Poppy War is kind of set in a 20th century China inspired world called Nakara, and there are a lot of historical events that have influence in the story. Yeah, let's say that it gets real dark real quick. Well, actually not real quick. Towards like part 3. This book is kind of split into 3 parts, but the third part, I'm just gonna leave it at that. The third part is where things get real, like real, and just, yeah, gotta brace yourself. Basically, you're following this war orphan. She's definitely an underdog kind of character, but she also is a very power hungry character, and she will do whatever. She has nothing to lose anyway. She's like rock bottom to begin with, so there's only going up once she gets a taste of that power, that privilege a little bit. She just will do anything to claw her way up to the top. Well deserved as well, because she like tries like 10 times harder than all the other kids that technically have been training all their lives, but they're also from like wealthy families. When you come from nothing, you can be double or triple the savage to climb up that ladder, and like privileged people don't know what's coming for them when Rin comes along into the fray. Basically, Rin's a war orphan. She's from like a very poor province, but then in this empire, like there is this test that allows people from all different provinces to take and have the opportunity to go to a elite kind of military academy. And so our main character, she's like 12 at the time. She's potentially going to be in an arranged marriage, and she's not having it. She's not going to be marrying this old guy, and so she's like, I'm gonna take that test. She studies like crazy for the test, and eventually, of course, her hard work pays off. She ends up getting like top scores and goes into the most elite academy in this empire. And so from there on, this is kind of like a very militaristic fantasy. So obviously in the school, she's learning how to be, you know, a commander, a general, also a soldier, and it's really cool. I love a magical school setting. I think towards the beginning, a lot of the story is grounded. There's not much magic. She does learn magical elements in the school, but it doesn't really come to play until like halfway through. I would say that it's a lot more grounded than I expected, because I thought we're gonna have fantasy from like the get-go, but it really isn't. It's like military fantasy. It's more about strategy and like battles and wars. It was an intense time. I will say though, I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, but there are some elements that I wish could have been a little bit better. The only thing that I can be critical of in this book is like the pacing and the fleshing out of other characters, and also like the world. I would want a bit more development, but other than that, I think R.F. Kuang like wrote a trilogy worth of content into one book, but I also think that that is somewhat of a negative as well, because I think the first part could have been one whole book on its own and like fully flesh out like the Synagogue Academy and all that, and then we can really flesh out the world by all the lore and history that she could learn at the school. But it was kind of a little bit glossed over. I think like 2 of the courses was more central to the plot, to the story, and was more highlighted, and all the other classes weren't really, and stuff like that. I feel like even in the second part, the things that go on, the side characters needed a little bit more fleshing out. The passage of time was also very aloof. I wasn't feeling like the tiresomeness of war, like the struggles. I feel like there is room for improvement, but overall the story was captivating. Like I said, what this book does is really encapsulates the horrors of war. Like a lot of fantasy can kind of glorify war, but this one is like, whoa, I have never read such horror in a fantasy book. Things get dark real quick, and the fact that some of these events were inspired by real historical historical events is quite nauseating to me. It's just so disgusting, the levels of humanity can be degraded to in times of war, and I'm just like, I'm shooketh. The just absolute atrocities that can occur. And so I think this book really captures that well, and there's no like sugarcoating it, how depraved people can be in war. So I'm just gonna say brace yourself if you go into this book, but otherwise the journey that Rin goes through is really awesome. It also has a very cool and unique magic system where you basically have to get like spiritual enlightenment and reach the gods, and you can harness godlike powers and bring it back into our reality, and it's just super cool but also has kind of severe consequence. So I like when stories puts like a limitation on the magic that they can use, because otherwise you can just annihilate everything and just come out on top with no problem if there's no limitations to your magic. So I like how in this book there is mentioning of like consequences. You lose your mind pretty much if the god takes over your body, and so there is that, but I have a feeling there's gonna be like other consequences as well as just the mind. I have my theories for the second book or the third, who knows. This was like my latest obsession. I haven't done an all-nighter in like so long, many years. Okay, maybe like last year I might have done like one, but 3 nights in a row, come on. It was insanity, and I definitely suffered the next week because I had to go to work and I was severely sleep deprived. But don't worry, I was functioning normally, I think. I don't know. Anyway, I've recovered now until the next night shift, or until I seriously get into the Dragon Republic, which is the second book of the Poppy War. But I'm seriously concerned for myself. Well, I have started, but once I start like actively reading it properly, I'm very concerned for my sleeping schedule. Not gonna lie, I definitely did not treat my body right. So that is it, guys. These are my July reads of 2021. I can thank lockdown for kind of getting me to read more than I usually do, and so props to the lockdown. Even though I want to get out of my house, please people stay at home. It's very frustrating. Every day the numbers just keep going up. I have no hope for Sydney. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. What have you been reading in the month of July or currently reading? Have you read any of the books that I read? Please let me know what your thoughts are, if you enjoyed it or if you didn't. I will see you soon in my next video, which is probably going to be my July wrap up for all the movies that I've been watching throughout the month as well. So that will be the next video that comes up. I'm gonna just tell you now, I watched so many movies in the month of July. So that was also a record breaker. I used to be able to read 4 books every month, and now it's just like, why is it such a struggle town to read 4 books or more in a month? I don't know. I shouldn't be so down when I don't read that much in a month, but you know, I kind of want to keep my reading game going because I have so many books at home that are still unread. So it's not so I can do my reading challenge, it's more so that I own so many books that I haven't read and it embarrasses me. Anyway, going off on a tangent, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and like I said, let's have a discussion down below of what you're reading, your thoughts on the books that I mentioned today, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!